Excellent. Welcome to the Empowered You Project. We've got a real treat for you today. We've got Sharon Halliday, who I have been friends for now for quite some years. So I'm going to do a little introduction. This is the Inner Heartbeat podcast, where we talk about real life and the moments of life-changing moments that change them. And when talking with Sharon Halliday, we've talked in the past about the long night of the soul. So I'm not going to spoil it for you. We're going to get into that. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, Vic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super.
Hi, everyone.
Going to read your bio so that people have a bit of a gist about you, Sharon, and then we'll kick it off.
Sure.
So, Sharon Halliday, she is a wife. First off, I was going to mention that she's married and has 2 amazing children. And Sharon is also an author, a podcaster, a book coach, a Reiki practitioner, an angel intuitive, and a mother. So, and Sharon had this life-changing moment where in her teens, she picked up Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. And since then, Sharon has been working on herself and her business and her family. So her writing has been featured in 365 Moments of Grace, a book that shot to #1 in 7 categories within hours of being released on Amazon. Incredible achievement in the United States and Canada. And Sharon's own book, Messages from the Heart, 39 Answers to Your Life Questions, continues to be a go-to for her readers who are seeking advice on relationships, happiness, money and work, health and well-being. And Sharon is also the co-host of Chris and Shaz in The Mother of All Roles, where 2 real mums talk about real issues in an attempt to make the ordinary extraordinary. And as the book Sherpa, she now helps aspiring authors write their books and navigate the world of publishing to fulfill their dreams. And Sharon's mini course, which is $7, 3 heavy-hitting hacks to get your book out of your head and onto the page, was featured on the global course creation platform, Samcart. So this course helps writers to immediately take control of procrastination, take their books seriously, and take their writings to the next level. And one of the things that Sharon is for me as well, as she's my book coach. So we've got a book coming out this year, and Sharon's helping me to launch that. So, and definitely the book journey is a journey of many questions and much realization about yourself and spirit and everything. It's like this whole big thing. And when you've got somebody there to bounce it off, it definitely makes writing so much easier. So if you're looking to write a book, Sharon's your girl. Thank you for joining us. Sharon, so yeah,
Thanks.
did I cover your bio well, or do you want to say anything else about yourself?
Hey, that's me in a nutshell, everything. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
I love it. Well, welcome to Inner Heartbeat podcast. So I thought I might ask you a few questions.
Sure.
If that's okay, and we'll get it cranking. So we've talked in the past previously about the long night of the soul.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you once and you were like, man, I just remember like just laying there just like in tears that you wanted something more out of life. So can you let us know what it was that you wanted more out of life? What was going on with your soul, and what was this long night?
Sure. Yeah, this dark night of the soul that we talk about, we've all had them, and you certainly know when you're in them, when you're feeling that deep anguish and despair, grief, and it's like inside of you there's this internal battle and struggle that rages on. It's like you feel like all hope is lost in that moment. I think you don't have the clarity, you can't find solutions, you can't see them. It feels overwhelming, and it's like the world's collapsing in on you. That's the best way I can describe it. I've had dark nights in my time, like when I've lost loved ones, particularly when I lost my grandmother, who I was so close to. I went through heavy times, as most of us do, like pre-teen and then through teenager years, some some stuff I had to navigate there when my parents divorced, when we lost our family business. And then as a new parent, when you feel like you completely lose your sense of self and identity. And then as a wife of a detective, when, you know, your partner's exposed to traumatic situations. So one of the dark nights that I had that comes to mind is when I was precariously balancing being, you know, a writer, so my writing world, and you know, having my writing published for the first time as Ask Sharon, and still being in the thick of parenting and having 2 little kids and running a household and everything that entails. And bearing in mind that, you know, from the time that I first imagined becoming a writer at age 11, it would be 25 years later that I would actually officially become published with my own column, Ask Sharon, and then it would be another year on top of that before I had my own book. So it was a long time, this, I guess, really navigating that world of writing and what it meant to me. And so there was this one night when we were still living in Griffith, and I remember I found myself curled up in the fetal position on the floor, just crying, you know, on the floor of my office/master bedroom. I had a child that was sick with croup. I had another child who was going to kindergarten, who obviously also needed me. The house looked like a bomb had gone off. And I had a column due. And so even though I love my writing, here I was in such despair because I really felt like the weight of my responsibilities was getting to me, you know, in conjunction with trying to find my life as a writer. And, you know, as I said, I'm on the floor and it's like I'm pleading with the universe, you know, if I'd been given this call of writing and to be a writer, which I love so much, you know, why did I have to constantly battle for the time and energy to put into that? When I also wanted to be, you know, this loving parent and partner who was present for their family and who still had to manage those other responsibilities and juggle those things that go into life. And I also had a healing practice, so I was seeing clients, and it just all felt too much. So there were times when I thought maybe this writing thing wasn't for me after all, or like I'd put it on hold until when the kids were older. But something inside of me said that didn't feel right too, because I always wanted to demonstrate to the kids that, you know, I was more than mum, and I was a person that had my own dreams and goals, and that it's really important to demonstrate that to kids that you have a life. You know, yes, you're a parent, you're a mum, but you have a life outside of that. And it's really important for them to see that one day if they have things they want to go for, that they need to do that. And that can be a challenge when you're in partnership with people, and that's something they're going to have to navigate too. But I just didn't want it to be so damn hard to pursue this thing that I loved so much. And I think my inner struggle was exacerbated at the time by the fact, you know, my husband was working long hours as a detective, as I said, on a high profile murder case. And so I guess there was this real emotional heaviness around it. And I felt like I needed to support him. And then on top of that, you know, I had a column due and I couldn't produce my usual happy-go-lucky, empowering, upbeat piece of writing, giving advice to people how to stay positive and have a meaningful life. I had to be sensitive and compassionate and respectful. And the title of that column was actually Time to Show Compassion. And yet here I was struggling to give it to myself.
Yeah. Wow, that's really real. Thank you for sharing that. So when you're talking about the healing, so you've had a healing practice, and in the past you've talked about when you're doing healing, you give it to the light.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the best way I can describe it.
I wanted to know, just can you describe that light? What the thing that you're giving it to the light? What is the light?
For me, and I'm sure it's different for every person who does this work, you know, as you said, I'm a Reiki practitioner and an angel intuitive. So I've had actual training and I've got certificates in those modalities. And I've had a long practice, you know, experience practicing working with people. And so when I'm doing the healing, and really what I want to say up front about that is I'm just a vessel. So when I go to do a treatment, if you like, a session with someone, I'll take myself outside, put my feet on the ground, I call in my guides, and I basically just, I literally say the words, I now surrender my ego. Please help me to be a channel of love and light. So it just takes me, the human, out of it. Yes, I'm putting my hands where they need to go and all of that, but I'm acting on inspiration from the universe.
Yeah.
And so when I go in and I'm doing that treatment and I'm guided where to go, and I see what I see things like movies. I often see past lives. And when I don't always divulge those to clients, but I explain it in a way, if it's necessary for them, if I can feel instinctually that is something that they need to, they get that clarity of, oh, that's why that happened, or that's why I have the dynamic I do in this particular relationship, or that's why I keep revisiting this painful problem, whatever it might be. When I see what I see, and I, particularly with pain, physical ailments and emotional, pretty much everything, I just pass it up to the light. And that light looks like, it's almost like it goes up to the galaxies. It's like the universe opens up and it's like, I guess, a portal to somewhere else. It just gets absorbed. Sometimes it comes back down like, I guess, fairy dust or whatever you like, just light. It transmutes.
Yeah.
So it takes that pain and as I've said to you before, one of the things I say to each of my clients, particularly when they're in so much anguish and physical pain, is that when you get what the lesson is behind the pain, it will go. Now, that doesn't matter whether it's a headache or something more serious, like, a terminal illness or a major trauma. When they fully understand what the lesson is, what that pain is there to teach them, it will dissolve. And I'm just really a facilitator of that.
And how do they learn that lesson? How do they find out what they're supposed to learn?
Good question. Sometimes me saying that to them creates a bit of a light bulb effect where they go, they've never thought of it before like that. People,
and that in itself is the beginning.
Absolutely. People tend to go into that, it's easy to fall into that victim mentality where like life is happening to me. And when they start to realize they can be a co-creator of life, and it doesn't have to be that way, but they have some, say, programming from their past, conditioning as a child, trauma experiences that keep repeating in some way. Like when they understand that, I guess it's sometimes they need to do a bit of work on themselves, and they'll say to me, so what do you suggest? Sometimes it is affirmations, just starting to retrain the language that they're using. And that affirmations can be a gentle start. It can be, I send them some meditations or some tracks to listen to that will just start to, I guess, rewire their brain. It's that whole neuroplasticity. And some of them like to understand that that's a part of it as well, that there's a science behind this, that we are all energy, and that's a fact. Like, so when you're opening them up to these ideas that maybe they've never understood before, things can fall into place really quickly. And then it's a matter of them doing some work. Most of the time it's clients that they need to look after their self-care more often. They've just continue to put themselves at the bottom of the list, or they fall completely off the list, and they wonder why they are just in a world of pain.
Yeah.
So it's that process of helping them through, giving them tools, just teaching them from my experience and from what's worked for me and what's out there, just giving them that, and then letting them figure it out from there. And then, if they come and have another session and we work on the next thing, and when they start to feel better, like it's instant, to be honest. I was saying to you about that client I had the other day who had a protruding lump in her back. And when I put my hands on and did my thing, and then afterwards, she was shocked. She was surprised. It had gone. It was a miracle. There was a lump, and then there was no lump, and her pain had subsided. So how do you explain that? Like, they have to experience it for themselves. And when they do, they go, oh, maybe there's something in this.
Yeah. I got a friend I want to recommend you to, like, recommend you to her.
Yeah, sure.
That was from back pain. Okay. So the dark night of the soul was very, very real for you. So did you get support at that time, or did you write it through? What was your process? How did you come out of that and end up becoming this amazing author?
Thank you. Look, this is something I am constantly working on. Like, I've had to develop a tribe around me, you know, these people that I can turn to. I'm so blessed that you're one of them. So I don't feel like I need to carry this burden by myself. And I think there's still so much expectation, particularly on women, to just get on with it. You know, and I suspect men are feeling the same. Like, there's these pressures, you know. I believe it's changing, and the only way that we can get better is to first speak up. You know, people aren't mind readers, and they're living their own lives, so they may not actually pick up on someone's emotional state. So it's a bit unrealistic to sort of expect or hope and pray that someone will notice that you're not doing so well, and to ask the question, you know, how are you doing? And that's why that, you know, Are You Okay Day campaigns like that are so useful, because it's really taken the stigma out of being comfortable speaking up, and then also being in tune with other people and asking, are people okay? Like, but then back then, when I was having my dark night, my mum was a huge support, my husband Steve, and some good friends. But what I recognize now is I certainly didn't reach out as much as what I could have. Like, there were plenty of times when I suffered in silence, and I feel like that's really a bit sad. It was obviously part of my journey, but it actually feels a bit now unnecessary. And now that I know, beauty of hindsight, that there's a healthier way forward. I remember a good friend, Donna, had turned up at my house to check in on me because I probably was a bit AWOL, and like had been really sick. My kids were sick. I was sick. Mum and Steve, my support mechanisms, were away. So I was struggling for about a 3-week period. So thankfully, because she was a nurse, she recognized that I really needed to seek medical attention. I was on the verge of a pneumonia. So she minded the kids while I went to the doctors and got all that sorted out. And that gave me the strength to kind of, you know, build up and keep going then. But I needed to look after my needs. It was, that was something I was really wrestling with. Like, how do I couldn't even get my head around, how do I get to the doctors? I've got 2 sick kids. How do I do this? Now, all I had to do was pick up the phone, and any one of my friends would have been there, you know, to use your the name of your podcast, in a heartbeat. They would have been there. But this is how it unfolded. And then she let my friends know, and they rallied around. And, you know, what I realized is I'd soldiered on at the detriment of myself. And that's been quite an ingrained pattern I've had to break. I believe, you know, that's kind of been our family's thing. And I'm definitely not an isolated case. I think most people are so used to that, like, just front up, get on with it.
And suffering in silence, they just keep on going. Like, life is just a struggle, keep going.
Absolutely.
And
I, like I was saying, this is a lesson I'm still learning, because, you know, I just had to revisit this whole notion of speaking up last week when our community was reeling from a traumatic experience. And again, it was close to home, involving my husband's work. And at the start of the week, I definitely slipped back into those old habits of, I can't ask for help with this. And there was a whole host of reasons why I felt that way. I felt justified in holding on to this myself. And at some point, 2 or 3 days in, I couldn't hold it anymore. And initially it was my mum again, who very bravely held that space for me. And if I'd have spoken up a bit sooner when I was feeling this grief and this emotional despair, she'd have been the rock for me. It's like I went through 2 days just by myself. But by the end of the week, I'd had conversations with friends. I'd shed a lot of tears. And I'm part of this women's circle online. And once I shared that with them, just the overwhelming messages of support and the compassion, I could feel their love and prayers. And they were just so supportive. And then that allowed me to send my love and prayers to the people involved with this incident, which I was feeling very empathetic about. And look, one of my mates in the group, Beck, she called me and we had like an hour-long conversation, just dissecting all of the stuff, just allowing me to speak and cry and deal with it. And I guess by the end of it, I realized how crucial it is just to surround yourself with people who care, and who they're all willing to be there for you. So I think,
How would you find that circle of friends? How would you?
Through making connections. When I first met Beck, and she's introduced me to the group, but they're out there. Like we're not the only one. There's so many different support groups now. We just they've been going for quite a long time, so I'm really the newcomer, the newbie. But we have a little group on Messenger, and then we have like a Facebook event set up that we go and participate in. So we're all on there, and we do our oracle cards, and we talk about what's been happening, and we support each other, and it feels empowering. And often someone else will be able to reframe it in a way that when you're in the middle of it, you can't quite get there yourself. And that's pretty powerful. And that's what Beck was doing for me. And I guess I thought about how I'm so happy to like support other people. Like if someone's in need, I'll be there. And so why was it that I wasn't giving other people that same credit? I needed to really get past that I didn't have to hold this on my own. And I think the other thing I learned last week was that you never underestimate the healing power of a hug. I discovered that big time, that sometimes not even when words won't do, human touch is all you need. That's a big one.
So that's really good. So with community, I had an experience. So I was like 36 years old, and like I was just living life. We don't IGA stores at this time, so I was just like, IGA and home, IGA home. That was it. And then I was like 36, and I went to a conference, and I saw all these people dancing and having fun, and I was like, wow, this life exists. And I never knew that. And some people go their whole life without being a part of a community. And don't even know that this life exists. And when I saw that, my whole world changed. I became a social butterfly, and I was like, when I see something on Facebook now and someone's going hiking, I'm like, yeah, I'll come. Like, I'm doing all these new things. I'm like, I like to say yes to new things now, because I never know where it will lead me. Like going to that conference that day, I had no idea what it was, but someone invited me, and I was like, there you go, changed my life. Community,
expanding your horizons. It reminds me of that movie, the Jim Carrey movie. I think it's called Yes Man, and he just starts saying yes to everything in the interest of experiencing all of life. And I think that's a fabulous new approach, because it can feel uncomfortable at first, but then when you actually immerse yourself in it and you get all the benefits of, wow, this social connection is, it's so different when you're in person to, compared to like the online stuff's good because it's something when you can't be, most of this women's circle are up in Canberra. But I get to tune in because I'm online. So that's fantastic. But I think there's also a benefit of seeing people face to face and that human touch. And
Yeah. Like when you see that event come up on Facebook, maybe consider it.
yeah, that's right.
Excellent. So your dark night of the soul. So one of the techniques you did is you started to not suffer in silence anymore. You started to talk to your mum and let your husband know and join this sister circle or circle of women. And so that was one of your techniques. And of course, you're all about the light. Was there any other techniques that if someone's listening right now and they're like, yeah, I'm really struggling with life itself, what technique would you feel
Yeah.
that they might benefit from?
Well, ironically, writing was a big thing. Here I was having my dark night of the soul, wrestling with the writing world and my other world, sort of, as George in Seinfeld would say, the worlds are colliding, like I was having that moment. But we've talked at length, you and I, about the power of writing. And so writing's like my best friend. It's always there for me. It helps me make sense of things. It helps me process what I'm going through. It's, you'll hear people say writing's cathartic, it's therapeutic. It's cheap therapy. It can be your own private sanctuary. So you don't have to worry about ridicule or judgment or shame or any of those other emotions. You don't have to pack those on top of what you're going through. You can just bare your soul. And yeah, you get to lay it all out there, and it helps you make sense of stuff. It's a huge release in and of itself. Meditation is definitely another practice that I go to.
Yep.
And I've learned over the years that meditation, I'm a big fan of guided meditations, because I get like a lot of people, you get that chatter and it helps me to stay focused. But I've also recently opened up to the power of just the silence and sitting with the silence and allowing those thoughts to pass by like clouds, and just not judge, be an observer, and really, allow yourself to sit in that silence and solitude, even if it's 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, doesn't matter, just something. Give yourself, and there's another really good exercise you can do. I think people call it legs up the wall, or where you lay on the ground and I put my legs up on the couch. Years ago, Sherry, a friend of mine, said like it's a really good adrenal reset. So there's little things like that. I love my books. I love sitting down and reading a self-help book. I love my podcasts, my Reiki, acupuncture. I love a salt bath. Taking myself for a walk to the beach now, nature walks. But it's really hard to beat. Not like, this is one of my favorites, is taking the day off. Sounds really simple. Even if you can just get a few hours while, say, the kids are at school, like a block of time between like 9 and 2:30 sort of thing. And in being at home on your own, not looking at any housework or any of the stuff you would normally do, putting on a sappy rom-com or whatever is your jibe, and just being, with no agenda, no schedule, just for a couple of hours. It's really, I think it really fills my cup. So, it's
I can feel it now.
I reckon there'd be a lot of, particularly mums out there, would be like, oh, I would give anything for that. Well, it's a case of just making it happen, because everything's going to be there when you're finished, but you'll be surprised by how much energy you get. You tell yourself these stories about, oh, I don't have time, I've got too much on today, blah, 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 blah. But you can really benefit so much and become even more productive afterwards when you've just granted yourself permission to stop. I think that's the big thing. And I see it as a strength now, that I can acknowledge when I need a rest before I've got to that stage of falling in a heap, most times. It used to take for me to be sick, bedridden or injured or something physical to happen to stop me in my tracks. And then I'd be like, okay, universe is telling me I need a rest. But now I aim to not let myself get to that stage. And I don't push myself so hard so I get to that stage. I bring more joy into my days. I guess we talk about balance a lot, but now I do something every single day that inflates my physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual tires, so to speak. Yeah. So, I've got my meditation first thing for my spiritual. Even if I'm not going to get to my usual 20-minute one, I might do just a quick 5-minute one. I've got my exercise. I'm always working on eating healthy for my body, food as fuel. So that's my physical. Doing the work that I love for my mental, nurturing my relationships with my family and myself. That's the emotional. I might do some journaling, which is also an emotional, filling myself up emotionally for that, or doing something as a family that really boosts us all. But otherwise you go through the process, like you just go through the motions of life day in, day out. Yeah. And you do the same thing over and over, and you wonder why you feel unfulfilled or resentful or completely stressed out of your brain. And so I do make conscious decisions now every single day to, as I said, pump up those tires. And I guess the dark night of the soul also caused me to become more in tune, not just with like my own needs, but recognizing where I might have been doing things like dipping into the martyrdom that just doesn't serve anyone. I've got very deliberate about how I spend my time. So that was a real, you talk about techniques. To me, that is a technique of itself. So for example, I have these priorities and projects checklist. I know I've shared it with you before and I review it regularly, but it's basically the top 10 things that I'm working on right now. So, my meditation goes on there, my family commitments, my work. And what happens is it makes it really easy for me to say yes to certain things and no to certain things, because if it doesn't fit in with that 10 checklist, it's a thanks but no thanks. And I don't feel guilty about it. It's just so easy, makes it easy. Because when you breed that resentment, you start doing things you don't really want to do. It becomes really draining. That's what I think is the biggest energy drain. Yeah. So I'm really mindful of where I dedicate my time and energy, and I do it without guilt. It's like a no apology. I don't make any apologies. This is who I am and what I do, and there'll be someone else that'll feel those shoes. I guess the dark night of the soul really highlighted that I had choices, and that making choices every day is on what's important to me, my priorities. So I now make time for my writing. The ironic thing is, the more I honored myself and my time for my writing, and when I stopped fighting it, I had more energy, like I said, to do other things. So I'll just share one of my favorite things I do now is I will take myself off to a cafe, and I'll have my laptop and my headphones and my work. And at the moment I'm working on my flagship writing course, which is really important to me. So I will get the kids to school, and then I will go there for a period of, it might be 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever, until I have to see them after school again. And I actually start to make significant progress towards my goals. And I feel so good. Like I've filled my cup with nourishing food. I'm out of the house, so I'm not looking at all the things that I feel like I need to do. I'm just focused on what's important. And it's just such a win-win. And so, after all, we are completion seeking, progress seeking beings. So when we have that sensation of, I've been productive today and it really mattered to me, we get that massive dopamine hit, and that gives us energy to go on and do other things. So then I come home with the spring in my step and I'm folding the clothes, not out of resentment and frustration, because I've just filled my cup all day, so it's those choices, it really
It's funny hearing you say that, because I said to Joel like a few times, I'm just so busy, got so much to do. And he goes, well, stop doing so much. Like he's
Exactly right.
like,
It's
if you want
that's
more time, take things off your schedule. Like it's so simple, but it's a skill that you gotta learn. It's like,
You are right. It is a skill. This where what I'm talking about right now is taking me so much practice of doing it and maybe not getting it right sometimes. And I
feeling
think
that, oh, I shouldn't have said yes to that. Then so
absolutely, and the thing I'll say about that is, even if you have said yes to something, and this used to happen to me, it'd like the words would fly out of my mouth and I'd be committing to something. And as soon as I did, I feel this sickness in my stomach, like, how am I going to fit that in now? There's nothing to stop you from turning around and saying to that person at some point, or in an email or whatever, communicating with them, you know what, at the time, I felt like it was the right thing to do and I could fit it in. But I've realized when I've looked at my schedule, I just can't. So you'll have to find somebody else to do that, or I won't be able to do that this time, maybe next time, who knows? So I think there's that too, that we tend to commit and then we think we're locked in. Well, it's not the case. Everything's movable, changeable. So I think the key is that when we make choices, it's either bringing us into alignment with what we want in our life, or it's taking us further away.
yeah.
And so we have to really be. And so my mum said this to me years ago, just pause, take a pause, tell them you'll get back to them if you can do it. Tell them it's a no first. And then if you change your mind, it'll be a bonus. But maybe err on the side of, unless it's something that really lights you up, maybe it's a deference to a no, and then see if you can fit it in. And then you don't have that whole thing of having to get back to people and letting it sitting in guilt and all that stuff. It's just, it
and
frees
time,
you.
energy.
Yep, it frees you up for sure.
Awesome. I'm getting closer to my final question, Sharon. Is it
Sure.
before I get there? Is there anything that you want to talk to this group about? Anything that you feel that you want to leave a final message?
Yeah, this came out 24 hours ago. In this moment, I was sitting on a beach watching my kids with their nippers, like Surf Life Saving Club, in the sun. And I was on a phone call to my new good friend, Evan Yearwood. He is an absolute master at goal setting and and coaching, and we've been brought together, and I'm now his book coach. And we were having this conversation about he was feeling the same frustrations that I had gone through all those years ago. How am I, I've got all these grand ideas and I want to execute them, but I'm still doing paid work and all of that. And I was able to say to him, look, I get it. I've been there. And I think, so after my dark night of the soul that I talked about, I actually had a meditation a few days later. And the message that I got that came out of that was that you went through pain so others don't have to. And you can be the guide that you wish you had. So for me, that's now how I live my life with regards to my writing and my book coaching. I can see now, looking back, that I've had those experiences so that I can relate. Like, I guess it's like the pain that you had yesterday is the pain that someone else is going through today. And together you can find a way to tomorrow. That's what came out abundantly clear to me yesterday, that I'm now able to give him tools and techniques and advice, and together we'll figure things out to get his book written. And you know that, like, all too well.
That's exciting to hear you and Evan talking about that. So one more question before we get to our final question. Talk about goals. What's one quick tip that you think that would help people believe that they can actually get their goal? Because some people just wish, but it's not.
This is huge. Yeah. Well, there's
Yeah.
two things. One thing that Evan really taught me, because he's doing a goal setting program that goes for 12 weeks and we're just over halfway mark. And I've done more in my work and my life in the last like 6 weeks than I have in months. So there's something in this. He helped us connect to the vision. So he created like, you know, teaching us how to go into the 3-year vision of what we want to achieve 3 years down the track, and really, you know, getting into the feeling of it. What does it look like? How does it feel? And his thing is like, you know, finding the meaning behind all of that. So that's his wheelhouse to help us get to that place.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at your, say, a 12 weeks or a week, whatever you're looking at for goals. What are the tactics that you actually need to do right now that's going to help you get there? You know, what are some goals that you want to achieve that help you get to that vision? And what are the tactics that make up those goals? That's probably the better way of saying it. So what it does is it gives you a focus. And within that, one of the techniques that I like to use is the Pomodoro method. There's something about this thing, and for people who haven't heard of it, I've got it on my app on the computer, and it's on the phone and it's free. There's this guy that discovered that, you know, about 25 minutes is what our brain can handle to work consistently on a task. He was studying and back, I think, in the 70s. And so he had this tomato timer, and that said that Pomodoro means tomato. And so he figured out, look, I'll put the timer on for 25 minutes and then I'll have a break and then I'll get back into it. And so for me, what it would do is really give me this kind of steely focus and resolve. And I'd sit and start working on a document, and I'd look at the time and I'd be like, I've just spent 5 minutes trying to find that document, or like, that's valuable time. Like, so it really helps me to kind of get in and execute, rather than being sort of wishy-washy or, you know, just flaking through my tasks. I have a purpose. I say to myself, look, if I can just write this paragraph or this page or whatever it is you're working on, and you set your timer and you get on with it, and it just goes like that. You give yourself your 5-minute break, get up, have a walk around, come back. And it is one of the most productive tools, honestly. I mean, there's lots out there.
A purpose plus a timer.
Purpose plus a timer.
And you're going.
Well, I think it's time for us to start treating our time like it is gold.
Yeah.
You know, rather than just dwindling it away. Yes, there's times when you need to relax. I've made that clear today. But there are also, when you're working towards something and your goals and your dreams are important, then you got to execute. So
how you don't get it back.
You cannot make more time.
Not getting yesterday back.
That's right.
Cool. I love it, Sharon. Okay, now my favorite question. So if there was a billboard and the world could see your message, the whole world is seeing a message from Sharon Halliday, what would it say?
It's 4 simple words, Vicky. Live from the heart. And I'll tell you why. Because, you know, our joy and our bliss and our kindness and our compassion, and our love, it all resides in our heart. And, you know, so many people appear to be living from their head, and they're just on this treadmill of life. They get up and they do the same thing over and don't get any better results. And I guess, and, you know, I've been there too. So I get it. But what I've discovered is that when you make your heart your compass, life is rich beyond measure. So live from the heart.
Yeah, love that.
Thank you.
That's it's different. So like, because most people think I'm so smart, so I live from the upper part, not from the heart. But,
well, you know, you still need the brain and the head to execute and be logical. But if that heart compass is not guiding you, then you know, you won't get to like live that fulfilling life and that life that you desire, get to your goals and dreams, which are important to you.
Yeah.
You know?
I heard someone once call the heart the central intelligence. Yeah, central intelligence, something like that. That's cool. Thank you, Sharon, so much for joining us today.
Most welcome.
How can our viewers find you on social media?
Sure. So they can just, I'm sure a Facebook search would find me, Sharon Halliday. I've got my Facebook page, The Book Sherpa. And look, I've got my website, www.sharonhalliday.com. It's got all my some resources and my, anything they want to, if they wanted to purchase something from me or go further with coaching or do the work that I do together, then that's where they would find it. Yeah, I'm
perfect.
Open.
Simple. SharonHalliday.com.
Yeah, that's it.
Keep
Keep it simple. Just